investing is one thing, but investing with a purpose to be able to give back and help people, that has just taken it to a whole other level.
Hi guys, welcome. Today I have a very special guest, one of our partners in our Hope Haven Partners initiative, where we want to provide permanent housing for domestic violence survivors. So Amy is an awesome sister in Christ, fellow Owners Club member, very experienced real estate investor, awesome underwriter. First of all, welcome Amy. Thank you for joining
Thank
us.
you. Thank you for this. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, for people who may not know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yep. So I'm here in Michigan. I'm in the Metro Detroit area, and I've been a full-time real estate investor for 4 years. About 4 years ago, I have twin daughters that are now 11. We had just gone through COVID, and I was doing the virtual homeschooling with part-time in school and really just got burned out on my job and my W-2. And I'd always wanted to do more real estate investing. So I quit my W-2 and started investing full-time in real estate. So I started off by doing fix and flips. Then I've built a long-term rental portfolio here in Michigan. And my husband and I also have some short-term vacation rentals outside of the state as well. And it's just been very important to me to get involved in the community and help house people who need housing that maybe are in more delicate situations. For example, domestic violence victims, survivors of domestic violence, it's very near and dear to my heart. And so being able to help people like that by partnering with some local nonprofits has been amazing for me.
Yeah, you do so much great work, which we'll get into that. But I'm so thankful because you and Nayeli, who's also an Owners Club member, you guys started this initiative and you guys brought me in to help raise capital. So I'm learning a ton about domestic violence, which wasn't really on my radar, but the more I learn about it, it's really not that different from trafficking or
Yeah.
widows and orphans that God calls us to help. So first of all, why are you so passionate about domestic
Mhm.
violence?
Well, my mom was actually a victim of domestic violence. So my dad was very abusive, and we grew up in a household where we witnessed quite a bit of the abuse. And it's always been very near and dear to my heart. I really feel like people should be given the ability to find a safe place. Safety for women, for children, for anybody that's being abused, I think is crucial. And it really does start with finding some place where they can live. And things that people don't really think about is that, there's the feeling of safety, but safety is often found in your home. And if you don't have that, then it's a crucial portion of what people need to do. And so by being able to support other people, it's been really therapeutic for me to be able to give back and work with people who are coming out of the shelters to be able to provide them housing. So it's always been something that's been very important to me.
I love that. I mean, being so successful yourself, but you really care about giving back and using something personal in your life, turning that negative thing into a positive thing. And I know you're so involved with different nonprofits and you're really making an impact. For someone like me who's not super familiar with domestic violence, what are some of the things that most people don't think about when it comes to that?
I think a lot of times the awareness and understanding what's going on around people, I think it's a lot more prevalent than people think. And sometimes there's a stigma attached to it. And so a lot of times friends, family are not aware of what's going on. And so by being more observant, there's a lot of shelters out there that do help with people coming out of violent situations. But with that, a lot of times there are limitations. So you may be able to go to the shelter for 60 days, 90 days, if that's something that you even choose to do. But where do you go after that? If you don't have a safe place to go after that, then a lot of times you'll end up back with your abuser or in another bad situation. And so as real estate investors, that's one thing we can do is to bring the housing as that solution for people, because there's a housing shortage anyway. But when you're then putting people in a situation maybe where they don't have the resources or they're not expecting to be needing housing at such a short period of time, it can be really difficult. So what we've been able to do is build relationships with the housing directors of some of these nonprofits, and we can let them know when we have a unit becoming available, and we can get that on their radar to maybe fill the the need with somebody who's coming out of the shelter. And so that's worked out really well for us and for several families too. And we just really like to be able to give back. So I think by raising awareness about how prevalent it is and that what people can do to give back. A lot of times when people do leave these situations, they leave with nothing. They don't
Hmm.
have clothing, they don't have their belongings, they don't have furniture or household items. And there's a lot of people out there and a lot of nonprofits that will help people by furnishing houses. We've had situations where they come into one of our rentals and a nonprofit will furnish it for them. They'll get dishes, they'll get pots, pans, things you don't really think about, toiletries, linens, those types of things. And so there's so many different ways that people can help to get people to safety, because the biggest thing we want to do, and I was very fortunate, my sisters too, that we broke the cycle. So we are not in abusive relationships. So we have the support of our husbands, and our children do not have to face those types of situations. And so by doing this, is the least we can do to give back. And so it really is something that's near and dear to our hearts because of that. Yeah, we're really excited about it. And by joining forces with you, with Nayeli, with other people in Owners Club, there's so many people that want to do such great things. And I think by banding forces and raising awareness, not only about domestic violence, but like you mentioned, trafficking too, because it's become such a huge issue. And
Hmm.
it's one of those situations, if we don't provide safe environments when they come out of those situations, the likelihood of them going back is pretty high. And then the likelihood of them getting rescued again is very, very low, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, that's one thing I've learned from you guys, that maybe at the shelter they can stay for 90 days, but usually they don't have a place to go, so they end up going back to the abuser. And I even heard a story from a personal friend that, I mean, they went back to the abuser. The abuser's definitely not happy they left, so the abuse got worse, and they even threw a 6-year-old child against the wall who got brain damage and years later, unfortunately, passed away. So tell me a little bit about that, just how terrible it is for someone to get the courage to leave, but then being told that they had to actually go back.
I think one of the biggest things I know in my mom's situation was not knowing where to go or not feeling like she had the emotional support necessary. You know, when you think about the different components, if you're a mother or a father leaving an abusive situation, you've got to have the emotional strength to be able to be strong for your family, not to mention the financial resources and then the housing. So I feel like there's these three big components. And if we can help solve one, two of those problems, there's some amazing organizations here in Michigan. There's Safe House, there's Safe Place, and they provide a lot of resources for people. So growing up in an abusive situation, a lot of times those situations repeat themselves. I think it really becomes a vicious cycle for people to be able to break. And so by removing them from that situation, giving them the support they need, whether it's financial support, housing, emotional support. There's so much that can be done, because without that, a lot of times these children, not to mention the women or the men who are in these situations, may not end up surviving or will be in such a bad place that it can really affect the rest of their lives, right? And so even if this particular situation ends, that doesn't mean they're going to end up in a good situation long term. But if we can come in, if we can help, we can give them a safe place to live with emotional support, with counseling. Sometimes some of these agencies are so amazing that if they're needing to be housed outside of a typical radius where their children then have to be taken to and from school so that they don't have to disrupt their schooling, they will provide that transportation to make sure that those kids can maintain some of that continuity with their education. And so a lot of things that you and I wouldn't think about having to pick up and move very quickly because
Hmm.
you're fearful for your life, for your safety, for your children's safety. There's a lot of things that go along with that. And so there's a lot of things that keep people, unfortunately, trapped emotionally and physically where they're at. So by removing any of those barriers, we've found that it really does help people to know that there is hope. There are things on the other side. You can get to a safe place. And I think by raising the awareness, people opening their eyes to see maybe what's going on around them in their neighborhood, maybe even in their family. A lot of times people are not aware. In our situation, very few people were aware what was going on. And so it can be a very isolating situation for the people that are being abused. So increasing the awareness, letting people know that it is out there and it does happen and there are resources to be able to help people, that's our mission. And I'm really excited to partner with you and Nayeli and everybody else who wants to get involved.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think, just to recap what you said, because I think you said something that's very, very important, that people who are experiencing the abuse, they're terrified. It's a very difficult situation. Part of the reason why they want to leave, of course, but they don't, is they don't think they have the housing or the finances or the emotional support. Like you said, they feel very isolated or alone. But what you're saying, I think, is that there's actually a lot of resources that are available that people don't know about. And that's kind of the whole purpose of why we're here.
Yes, that's exactly it. There's so many ways people can help. When they're coming out of these situations, they need clothing, they need toiletries, they need some of the essentials that they may not be able to leave with. I mean, that could be toys for little ones, clothing, boys, girls, small, large, all across the gamut. And so by working with different nonprofits, we can give them what they might need to be able to walk into a new situation, if you will, or a new life and have things. I mean, yes, that's just material things, but there's things that people need, backpacks to go to school.
Mm.
If you're in a cold climate, you need boots, you need coats, you need hats, you need all of the essential items that you don't really think about if you were to leave in the middle of the night without any resources. What might you need? And so it's amazing if a lot of us get together and really work with some of these organizations to say, what is it that you need? A lot of us have, maybe you're replacing your dishes, you can give your dishes to somebody. You get a new set of pots and pans, you can give your pots and pans to people, or these organizations that support these survivors. Things like that, I think just raising the awareness would make such a huge impact across the country. And I think there's a lot of us able to do that, that would be more than willing to do that, just don't know that that's a possibility or that that's even a need, right?
Yeah, I mean, 100%, because as believers, right, God says, care for the widows and the orphans. And in some cases, domestic violence is worse because the father or the husband is not just absent, as it is in a widow and orphan situation, but it's actually doing harm. So I
Yes.
know, just, even with believers or even non believers, this is something that's such a great injustice. It's so
Mhm.
heartbreaking that I think, to your point, if they knew about it more, because it's so hidden,
Mhm.
it wasn't on my radar at all, that it would, number one, generate resources and people who are like, hey, I want to help, I want to do something. But
Yes.
two, going back to what you said earlier, it's so heartbreaking, Amy, to know that there's mother and children suffering unnecessarily, if you will, because
Yeah.
they don't think there are resources that are there to help them, so they just stay in that situation. So I'm
Mhm.
so thankful to you and Nayeli and being a part of this and what God is doing through us to help raise that awareness. So if somebody may be watching this and they're going through that, how can they reach out? Who can they talk to get help, to get somebody to learn about their situation?
Absolutely. There are so many different local organizations, if they have the resources to be able to look for those. A lot of times, these Safe Place, Safe House, and more national organizations have hotlines that they can call. They can call at any time of the day or night, and they are strictly confidential. I know that's sometimes something that is really difficult for people. I think I mentioned to you, Joshua, that when we were going through this as kids, very few people in our circle, our friendship, our family knew what was going on. And so a lot of times women may be fearful that if they reach out for help, if they choose not to go that route, that their abuser could take it out on them, so to speak. And so
Mm-hmm.
understanding that there's a level of confidentiality, even for housing. You don't have to, a lot of times what will happen is you're going to do a lot of this stuff behind the scenes, maybe before you actually leave, or you're going to be talking to people. All that is completely confidential. So people need to understand it's okay to reach out. It's safe to reach out. There's not going to be a red flag put out that you have to worry. And even if you are, searching for housing or talking to them about going into shelter, everything is completely anonymous. And that's one
Mm.
of the things that I really love about the organizations that I work with. Confidentiality is of the utmost. And so even if I'm talking with them about potentially housing a family and what their situation is, I never hear about names. I never hear about geographic location that they're coming from, what their specific identification is. And to
Mm.
be honest, that doesn't matter because we just
Right.
want to be able to help and solve these problems for a lot of people and know that they're safe in doing so. Because a lot of times, depending on how violent the situation is, it could become detrimental if it gets out. So I want people to know that there are safe places, even people that you can talk to. You can talk to counselors. You can tell them about your specific situation. You can talk through maybe some potential options of what they might have available for you or when they could get to you or what have you. So I don't want people to think that by making that first phone call that they're committed to leaving that evening or whatever the case might be. But but that there are resources that can guide you through the entire process to make sure that you're safe, your family is safe, everything is taken care of. And I think that those are some things that people don't understand, especially people that have never been in those situations. I think it's hard for a lot of us to realize how dangerous some of those situations can escalate to. There could be drugs involved, there can be alcohol,
Mm.
there can be a significant amount of violence, but just opening up the conversation with some people that maybe could help behind the scenes understand what's going on. I know in our situation, we had the police at our house a lot, and that was
Mm.
back in the 1980s, and it's really come a long way. And I think there's a lot more emphasis being put on it now than there was probably back then, and the dangers of what could happen. And I think if people understood that there could be a plan put in place, or at least even knowing that you're not alone, knowing that there's other people out there that are facing the exact same thing you are. There's no need to be ashamed. You did nothing wrong. It's not your
Mhm.
fault. And to
Mm.
talk to others and maybe make a plan for an exit or for some support, whether it's for you or your children. I think just making that first connection with somebody is very, very helpful. So that's some of the stuff that we want to do, is to get the word out there, start raising awareness, but then also helping in any way we can. Like we talked about, whether it be furniture, clothing, toiletries, items for the house, household items, and then the housing. I think those are all easy things a lot of us would be more than happy to do if we knew that was needed. And so
Mhm.
raising that awareness is huge. But I think making that first call and knowing that there is help, there are people out there that do want to help. And a lot of these counselors are staffed 24/7, or at least one person on call is, because that's usually when some of the calls come in.
That's awesome. How did they find these numbers? Did they just go on Google or?
Yeah, unfortunately, Google, safe house, safe place, domestic violence help centers, by Googling something like that. Most counties have at least one location. And if there isn't, feel free to call the closest one, because they will try to make arrangements. That's the one thing I have felt in working with a lot of these organizations. They have a mission to help people. And when people reach out, they will do everything in their power to help and to make sure that you're taken care of. And like I said, it's confidential and you don't have to worry about anything along those lines, but at least making the connection and understanding that people are out there and do want to help.
Like a person going through domestic violence doesn't want the abuser to know that they are putting it out there. So usually they're not going to let anyone know, even close friends and family. It's usually very hidden.
Mhm.
So what are some like red flags or,
Mhm.
some telltale signs to look for? Or if you see this in a person, you're like, hey, maybe this person is going through abuse.
Some of the main things that you can look for, obviously there's obvious signs, but usually abusers make sure marks are hidden, bruises are hidden, that there's nothing outwardly facing on the face, on the hands, on the arms. I think what you'll notice is people maybe start to withdraw emotionally, start to be less interactive with people, not wanting to make plans, looking towards their abuser for permission, approval, saying that they need to check with their husband, their spouse, before they're allowed to make any decisions or any plans. I think those are all telltale signs that maybe they're not in control of their own lives. And I
Hmm.
think looking for those signs of control, I think seeing kids probably withdraw a little bit too, being more quiet, being more less happy. Usually you can tell on a kid if they're happy go lucky, if they're carefree, if they're not stressed. If they tend
Hmm.
to withdraw and get quiet along with the mom, I think those are a lot of times tell signs. And I know a lot of people could say, oh, I know people like that and that's not happening. That very well could be true. And I hope it is. But you
Hmm.
might also want to check in your neighborhood. I have a dear friend who found out that his neighbor was getting abused and they got the police involved. And, you just never know what is going on around you, and trying to be as open minded. And a lot of us get really stuck in our own worlds. We're busy, we've got a lot of things going on, but just being somewhat observant and then
Hmm.
talking to your family too. If you do suspect anything, you don't have to accuse anybody. You could just cautiously check in on them. Are you doing okay? Is everything all right? Is there anything, going on? Because you seem to be a little bit quiet or withdrawn. That's the behavior that I feel that I notice, but
Hmm.
everybody manifests it differently. But those are some signs that I personally would look for, because I think a lot of times that's what ends up happening. But, that's a really good point. It would be great to have a counselor that we could talk to bring on, that could talk about some signs. Maybe there's more that we could be looking for to make people aware of. I think that actually would be a great conversation,
Yeah, I
something
agree with
to
that.
open our
Well,
awareness for all of us.
Yeah, we'll definitely look for one, and I think that's a great idea. Yeah, I love what you said, just kind of look for abnormal behavior or emotional patterns. And then it doesn't hurt to just ask the question,
Yeah.
right? Hey, are you okay? Is there something going on? Because if it's nothing, great, but then if it is, you can potentially make a huge impact and rescue them from a
Yes.
very, very terrible situation. I know, talking with people myself, domestic violence can go on for years. And so you could potentially, if you see some signs, just take the time to just care and ask and make a huge difference potentially.
That's actually in my family. It went on for over 10 years. And I bet most of the people I grew up with would be shocked to hear about it, that they would have had no idea. So you're right. It is something that a lot of people aren't aware of. People don't broadcast it. It's very much hidden. And that's by design, right? By the abuser. So threaten to not expose them. And so, yeah, that is absolutely what happens. And I think by just raising the awareness and keeping everybody's eyes open and understanding that if something is going on, that you could make a big impact. Similar to trafficking, we're seeing a lot of that now in the airports, a lot of raising awareness with people maybe being forced against their will to go from point A to point B. Similar to those types of situations, I think we all need to keep our eyes and ears open because it does happen, and it probably is happening a lot more than people realize.
One thing I've learned from you, Amy, that's been really eye-opening for me is that domestic violence survivors, more than needing housing or financial assistance, is actually emotional support. So talk about that.
I firmly believe in my mom's situation, it was more not knowing what to do emotionally than worrying about where are we going to live or would she be able to support us. My mom was extremely hardworking. She worked two jobs to support us. So to be honest, he was not providing in that respect. So I really don't feel like it was the financial piece. I don't necessarily think it was the housing piece. I think it was the emotional piece. How am I going to do this? Am I going to be safe? What would I do to get the ball rolling, and how would I get this started? Walking a person through that to help them understand that, number one, this is common. It's easier than you think. We have resources available. I think starting that ball, taking that momentum to push it forward, and then it kind of snowballs from there. I think that's what people don't realize. When people are in this situation, they're feeling a ton of pressure. It could be not just physical abuse, it could be a lot of emotional abuse, it could be a lot of belittling or cutting them off from their family, from their friends, from their bank accounts, from resources that would make them feel like they have the ability to leave. By providing that emotional support, I really think if my mom had more emotional support, she would have felt more comfortable leaving. And so I think that's a huge component that people don't realize. It's how do I even start? What am I going to do? Then you start thinking about how am I going to support myself? Where am I going to live? All those things. But if you could peel back some of those layers and start that initial conversation and realize that people do have the emotional support, I really think it would have made a big impact in our situation. And I'm sure that's the case with a lot of people. It's something that's probably been building for a long time. It may have been going on for a long time. So the emotional piece is probably first and foremost, and people may not realize that.
Oh, that's super insightful. So there's emotional support out there for people going through this. There's financial assistance and people willing to donate stuff. Now let's talk about the housing, which is kind of where we come in.
Mm-hmm.
Your role is very unique in our partnership in that you're the one who finds the deals, underwrites the deals, and will help us find managers to manage a deal.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about your background a little bit more so people know who you are, what are you
Yep.
bringing, what experiences, what skill sets are you bringing to this project?
Yes, absolutely. So I actually have more of a financial background. I went to Michigan State for accounting. I came out of accounting and worked for one of the big CPA firms for a couple years, did that for a while, and then switched over into recruiting. So I have more of an accounting and finance foundation. So for me, underwriting or figuring out if a property is going to be profitable is something I really enjoy doing. I like building relationships with brokers, with agents, with anybody who may have some off-market deals as well. I feel like in this space, you can find deals from a lot of different people. And so where we want to go with this is we'd like to do more on the multifamily space. Single family houses, duplexes are great, but we really want to make more of an impact by going with larger assets with more units in them. So the bigger the asset, the more places spaces that we'll have to hopefully be able to house people. And so I love getting involved in that. I love underwriting. I love building the connections. I love looking at properties to see if they will be a good fit for us, if they could really make a good investment for our investors. I think that's very important. I have probably 4 years of construction experience now because I've been doing a lot of fix and flips. So we're not afraid of value add properties. We are willing to roll our sleeves up, make any renovations necessary in order to get the properties up and running to be good, solid housing for people that need it. We don't only house people who are coming out of domestic violence situations. It's just another avenue for us to find tenants. And so for our investors, we do like to let them know that they are profitable investments regardless. And if it's another avenue, we can go to these organizations and find tenants when we have vacancies and they have people in need. It's a win-win situation. And so, yes, I love doing that kind of thing. I love coming up with deals. You know, we're doing a lot here in the Michigan market. Michigan is great. It is an appreciating state, but it's also a very heavy cash flow state. And so the entry values on the buildings really do cash flow when you look at the rental rate. So versus like a California where your entry point is probably several million on a 20 unit, we might be able to get something for 1.2, 1.5, something along those lines. And so out of the gate, you've got cash flow. And then there's obviously ability to make improvements and value add and those types of things.
Yeah, I super appreciate your experience and your ability that you bring to help even renovate or fix up properties, because that's something that can be very costly, but also cause delays. So I love that we can do this all in-house. I also love your heart to educate and help people who want to maybe get into real estate investing, get into multifamily, which typically is harder because it's a bigger project. And a lot of times you have to be an accredited investor with
Yes.
100K minimum. Tell the people about what we're planning to do for people we partner with as far as educating them and letting them be a part of the whole process.
Absolutely. What we really are excited about is creating an investment club through Fractional. Fractional is an amazing platform that will allow us to go into more of a joint venture with a lot of different investors who maybe don't have the status of being an accredited investor, whatever the minimum is for the project that we have, 10,000, 15,000, but we can keep our investors informed the entire way through. This is our project. This is where we're starting. Have monthly meetings, have status updates as far as this is where we're at today. This is where we envision ourselves going. These are the types of people that we're helping till we get the asset stabilized and then cash people out of the deal unless they want to stay in for a long-term investment, because those are always opportunities too. One of the great things is because the new tax laws have been put into effect is that we are looking at a lot of opportunities in opportunity zones, which could provide some really good tax benefits for some of our investors. But I think it's interesting for them to be involved the whole way. We can show you how we underwrite the properties. We'll show you how we prepare the rehab budget, how we manage the contractors, how we manage the entire process from A to Z, and then renting it out, getting the property stabilized, and then if our investors would like to stay in the deal, that's great. If they want to take their capital and move on to something else, that's fine too. But we do like to have that opportunity for people to be able to see it firsthand and learn from it. I know before I got into real estate investing, it was something I was very, very curious about. I just had no idea how to get started. And so I felt comfortable. I had the support of my husband. I jumped in with both feet and figured it out. And so to be able to share those experiences with other people to see how easy it is to get started, don't have to invest in a multifamily. A lot of successful families have one or two rentals, maybe that they keep for 30 or 40 years, and they pass them down generation to generation, or at least to their children, that they have that for some passive income for their retirement. And I think it's a really nice way for people to get the tax benefits of having rental properties, but also a little bit more security for their retirement.
Yeah, I love that because to your point, everybody wants to make more money and real estate's such a profitable area, but it's so hard to get into it.
It
And
is.
most of the time when you go into it, you just learn by mistake, learn by time. And some of those can be really costly and even traumatic. I know people who have lost money on deals. They're like, I can't even invest anymore. So
Yeah.
I think it's awesome that through the investment club, there's opportunity not only to invest and make an impact, but also
Mhm.
learn the whole process, like you said, from finding the property, underwriting it, managing it, etc. Where for those who want to start doing real estate investing, they can learn what we do from someone who's very experienced like yourself. You're going to show them everything, the whole playbook, and they can take that and go do it on their own. So I think that's awesome.
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things. I didn't grow up in an entrepreneurial family. I grew up not such a good environment. And so my mom always instilled in us go to college, get a job so you can support yourself. We knew what that meant. You don't want to be in a situation like I'm in. So we took that to heart. We went to college, we got jobs, but those jobs were also not fulfilling. And so we
Mm.
wanted to do something a little bit more. One of my sisters that went to college, she and I both switched careers. You know, you come out, you think you're going to do one thing and you end up in a totally different spot because you want to do something that you're more excited about. I want to show people that it's not difficult. As a woman, I feel completely comfortable running an entire rehab. I have contractors reporting up to me. I think it's something that everybody can do if they want to. And I think to instill that in other people to know that if you are in a job, either where you're not making the money you want, or you're just not fulfilled, or you're not as excited about the job, there are other options out there. I think we've learned a lot being in the community that we're in, but there's so many different entrepreneurial avenues to go down if that's something that you want to do, and just showing people that it's possible. You know, I didn't get started in this full time until my 40s. I never thought I could just quit my job and do it and still be successful. If I had known that in my 20s, I'd be in a totally different spot, but God works his magic and he puts us in certain situations for certain reasons. But I do think that just showing people that it can be done. If you're not happy in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, there's other ways you can make money, be successful, have wealth, or be able to provide for your family and really be able to do something that you're excited about. And that's why investing is one thing, but investing with a purpose to be able to give back and help people, that has just taken it to a whole other level for me. And I know for Joshua, you have mentioned the same thing. The importance of being able to do something that's near and dear to our hearts means everything.
I love that you shared that because as someone who's left my W 2 by God's grace last July, that's my passion too. That's my Mount Everest to help 1,000 people leave their W 2. And whether it's through real estate investing like yourself, underwriting deals, acquiring deals, or raising capital through social media, I think to your point, people out there don't know that there's so many different ways to make money in real estate. Before I joined the Sub 2 program last March, my only idea of real estate investing was fix and flips. That's all I
Yep.
knew.
Yep.
And my wife was like, you can't fix anything around the house. How are you going to do that? So,
This is
but
not
thank
going to
God
work.
that yeah, I was not gonna make it doing fix and flips. So thank God that there are a lot of other lanes you can do.
Yes.
And there's so many asset classes in our community, like you mentioned. People are crushing it doing short-term rental, long-term, mid-term, co-living, RV parks, mobile home parks, storage facility units, multifamily, you name it. The
Yep.
sky's the limit. So I love that. And also, Amy, I want to just say you are such an inspiring person, especially to women, like you mentioned, because I think there's that kind of myth or idea that doing a fix and flip, you have to be a man because usually
Yeah.
contractors are men. But I love that you just said, I'm comfortable doing it all on my own, managing a whole team,
Mhm.
and you have the experience to show for it. So I love that you're sharing that, you're willing to share that. And also, I think you're just you being who you are and what you've done as a woman really just inspires other people to overcome that mindset, that limiting belief maybe that they may have that, hey, I can't do this because I'm a woman.
I totally agree. And that's one thing that I really do want to help other women. Ultimate goal would be able to be an employer to people who maybe have been in domestic violence situations by acquiring businesses where they can get employment, flexible employment, because obviously if they're dealing with a family or have childcare needs, it would be really amazing to give them employment so that they don't feel like they have nothing to start with, but then also to educate them on what they can do. If they wanted to own their own home or invest in real estate or do any other types of investments, I think just helping other people realize that it's easier than you think. We live in the best country in the United States to be able to do something like this. And our only limits are, like you had mentioned, our beliefs, because you can do anything you put your mind to. And I think sharing that with other people and hopefully breaking the cycle for them and their children too would mean so much more than just helping a family here, a family there, really making a huge impact. That's ultimately what we would like to do.
Awesome. Maybe to wrap up, we are looking really to start a movement because this problem is so just prevalent everywhere and there's so much need. So whether it's someone who wants to join the movement by staying tuned on what we're doing, helping us raise awareness to your point earlier, who want to partner with us in our investment club or learn real estate investing while they make an impact and a return, what are ways they can find us and contact us?
Absolutely. On the screen is my Instagram handle at Amy Rende. I have another one at amyrende.rei, but this one is my personal, and feel free to reach out. We love to get people involved. I think by creating the movement, like you mentioned, we're going to be able to make such a huge impact. And I think just banding together, please reach out. We would love to get as many people involved as we can. And I can also give my cell phone number. That is area code 586-295-7985. We would love to have as many participants as we can because the more people we have, the more impact we can make.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mimi, for your time.
Thank
Praise
you.
God for what he is doing. And yeah, we would welcome anyone who wants to join us and be a part of this to help women and children, even men in domestic violence abuse. So thank you.